When I say toxic fandom in pop culture, what is the first thing that pops into your mind? Perhaps it's Star Wars, after Disney's messy and inconsistent use of the IP since its acquisition in 2012, which has completely divided the fan base. Perhaps it's Marvel, who in Phase 4 pushed away a lot of its audience with its heavy-handed and in-your-face social commentary. To me, though, the answer is clear. DC is a brand that has become nearly impossible to love in the year 2024. Let me go back to where I believe all this toxicity stems from. In 2013, Man of Steel released to completely mixed reactions. This movie has been beaten to death in so many videos and online forums, so I'll just talk about what's relevant to this video. Some people loved the bold and gritty direction Snyder took with Superman, while others weren't a fan of this depiction. When you hear defenders talk about this movie, they'll frequently discuss the directing, cinematography, symbolism, and the grounded and realistic tone that set it apart from other comic book movies at the time. When you hear detractors talk about it, they mostly discuss the mass destruction in the finale, Superman being more bleak than he is in other adaptations, and the big one, that he kills General Zod. Regardless of what you think about this movie and the decisions it made, it's undoubtedly the point where the cracks in the fandom started to show. However, they weren't ready for what was to come next.
I want you to remember, Clark, in all the years to come, in all your most private moments, I want you to remember my hand at your throat. I want you to remember the one man who beat you.
Whoa! What? What?
Later in 2013, Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice was announced at San Diego Comic-Con to a huge reaction by the fans in attendance. It's safe to say that this project was incredibly exciting to a lot of people and was highly anticipated. It finally released in 2016, but was not liked by a majority upon release. Once again, the portrayal of Superman had people split down the middle, but on top of that, to a lot of people, the portrayal of Batman was downright a betrayal to their childhood. However, there was a group of people who loved this movie, and that love only grew after the release of the Ultimate Edition. The split would only continue to get worse after the Justice League controversy, which we all know by now, where Zack Snyder was forced off the project after the unfortunate and tragic suicide of his daughter. Some people rejoiced and thought that Joss Whedon was going to save DC and the Justice League film, but instead, his cut of the movie pleased no one and sparked a movement that was equal parts historic as it was the killing blow to DC. The hashtag Release the Snyder Cut movement was, and still is, the biggest social media movement of all time, garnering millions of tweets and getting the entire cast to speak out and force WB's hand.
Question that is the mother of all our questions as a fandom. When will you release the Snyder Cut?
There it is.
Yes.
There it is.
It's a hard question. I don't know. What do you think, Henry?
I reckon you should show it.
We're doing it, so get ready.
Oh my God.
In 2021, their efforts were rewarded as the Snyder Cut was released. There, people thought, we can finally move on from all of this, as soon after the cut released, WB announced they had no plans to keep on Snyder. Except, no, that's not what happened. The fans of Snyder continued to push constantly for a revival of his series, and all of that came to a head when Black Adam released in October 2022. And with it, Henry Cavill back in the Superman suit. Henry Cavill's return was heavily praised as a step back in the right direction after years of mediocre to downright awful content. A sequel to Man of Steel that was announced right after made a lot of people happy. For a little while at least. Just a few days after Black Adam's release, James Gunn and Peter Safran were named heads of DC Studios, and all of that Cavill return hype was immediately destroyed as a reboot was announced. This once and for all completely divided the fandom. Snyder fans immediately pushed for James Gunn to be fired, and resurfaced old tweets and Facebook posts of tasteless and out-of-context humor that had previously got Gunn fired from Marvel. Gunn fans counteracted this by antagonizing the Snyder fans, and this is essentially where we're at today. Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, YouTube, you name it, and it's just a constant battleground between James Gunn and Zack Snyder fans. Notice how I no longer use the term DC fans, because at the end of the day, this conflict within the fandom isn't out of a love for DC. At least, it really doesn't feel like it anymore. Snyder fans want Superman to flop because they didn't get what they want. I truly believe this sense of entitlement comes from the Snyder Cut being released. They now believe that anything less than what they want is unsatisfactory. Meanwhile, James Gunn fans don't want Superman to succeed because they love DC, but to stick it to Snyder fans and prove James Gunn's vision is better. It's been nearly 2 years of this constant back and forth, and the fans who just love DC are constantly ridiculed and made fun of by both sides. I personally am a big fan of Snyder's DC movies, and I'm all in for different and more grounded takes on the characters so long as I enjoy the movies. I'm also a fan, however, of all the comic book films James Gunn has done, but I am constantly attacked by both sides for either supporting a monster or holding on to a dead universe. What it all boils down to is DC, as I mentioned earlier, is a fandom that lacks any sort of nuance in their conversations or disagreements. The us versus them mentality that plagues both sides also pushes away newcomers. I can't comment on the comic book side of DC, but at least for the movies and games, it's a complete disaster on the fandom and quality side. Recent game releases such as Gotham Knights and Suicide Squad have been met with near universal dislike, and in 2023 there were 4 DC films released that were all mostly poorly received, with the exception of Blue Beetle, which was met with a lukewarm response. I truly believe that James Gunn has the passion and love for DC that can pull it out of the rut it's in, and ironically, so does Zack Snyder. Recently, he's voiced his heavy support and appreciation for Gunn, who's even letting him release the Snyder Cut in theaters. I believe the people who want Gunn to fail are not DC fans. They are Zack Snyder fans, and unfortunately nothing less than a complete restoration of the Snyderverse will satiate them. However, if you happen to be watching this and are a fan of DC and not just individual directors, the best thing you can do for this brand is support Superman and give James Gunn a chance to show us his vision. And to the Zack Snyder fans, wouldn't trying to cancel Gunn's vision and boycott him be the same as the haters back in the day trying to cancel and boycott the Snyderverse? Surely there's a more mature and less hypocritical way to handle this. There's definitely a time and a place to go after corporations, and a much better way to get what you want than constantly being aggressive to the people who make the product and those who are just excited to see their favorite heroes return to the big screen. Now, to wrap up this video, I just wanted to say that I totally agree that it's a bummer we may never see a continuation of the Snyder Cut, as it's personally one of my favorite comic book films. However, I'm not going to boycott Superman or try and trend a hashtag to get James Gunn fired. That's a horrible mindset to have. Instead, I'm going to continue to support Snyder and his releases, James Gunn and his releases, but most importantly, DC as a whole, which is what I believe all DC fans should do, because at the end of the day, this brand is bigger than just a single person or vision.